It's kind of weird that nobody remembers True Blood. At one point, it was HBO's most watched show since The Sopranos. The characters had even appeared in Muppet form on Sesame Street, and the stars graced the cover of Rolling Stone. But ask someone about True Blood now, and it's like our collective memories have all gone foggy. So why do we barely remember this HBO hit just 6 years after it went off the air? I have a few ideas, so let's get into it. Since nobody really remembers this show, let's start with a quick synopsis. Debuting in 2008, the show was based on the Southern Vampire Mysteries from writer Charlaine Harris and was adapted by Alan Ball of 6 Feet Under fame for HBO. True Blood is set in a world where vampires have made themselves known after the invention of an artificial blood beverage that makes it where they no longer have to hunt and feed on humans. They're trying to fit into society, but people have an uneasy relationship with them, and there's a lot of hostility and othering that lets the show draw parallels to real-world marginalized groups. Our main character is Sookie Stackhouse, a telepathic waitress in Bon Temps, Louisiana, who meets a vampire named Bill Compton one night when she's working at the local bar. From there, Sookie and Bill begin a romance which leads her to new supernatural adventures, including steamy relationships with Viking vampire Eric Northman and super sexy werewolf Alcide Herveau. The first season of the show was great. It was campy when it needed to be, sexy when it needed to be, and it did an amazing job of nailing that world building to really immerse us into the story. We had the budding romance of Sookie and Bill, the threat of unknown danger from other vampires and from humans who hated Sookie for having a relationship with a vampire, and we had well-placed reveals that Bon Temps was a bit of a hub for all sorts of supernatural shit. The story moved along well, the characters were appealing, and while the production might look a little cheap by today's HBO standards, it was overall a really well-executed season of TV. The second season started to get weirder, but it expanded the world and the ratings. By season 3, you had more than 5 million people tuning in to watch all the steamy, bloody storylines. But those storylines started to get more and more convoluted, and the cast of characters started to bloat to the point where things took a turn. When the final episode aired in 2014, the show was like a bad fanfic of its former self. The audience had dropped off, and everything just kind of fizzled out entirely. It was still in the early days of fans bitching about things on social media, so we didn't have as many people publicly raging about the disastrous conclusion online, but I think that's actually more indicative of people just not giving a shit anymore. True Blood had come and gone, and people were kind of thankful that the once great show had finally been put out of its misery. About a year later, HBO Now launched, and the growing group of cord cutters could enjoy streaming HBO programming without a TV subscription. Did people rush to binge watch True Blood? No. The world had moved on, and everyone was fully afflicted with Game of Thrones fever by then, so True Blood just became this thing HBO had that nobody really talked about anymore. By that time, if you wanted a sexy story with gallons of fake blood and camp to spare, you had American Horror Story, which brought out the big guns of Mother Monster herself in the hotel season. Now that people are staying home more and binge-watching everything available on HBO Max, I thought I'd revisit a few episodes of True Blood and see if I had any nostalgia for Sookie and her vampire boy toys. But I quickly realized that the show just doesn't really hold up. 2008 was a different time, especially for HBO, and looking at the show through 2020 eyes really makes that difference obvious. The acting that I once loved feels way over the top, right down to the exaggerated southern accents that can feel borderline comedic at times. All those great metaphors for the real world are there, but they feel so much clunkier than I remember them. Even the sexy scenes, which were the talk of the town when the show was on the air, feel kind of cheesy. The whole thing just feels very TV, and HBO's moved light years past that at this point. So maybe True Blood was kind of a time capsule for that era before streaming TV was king, and we don't remember it because it just hasn't been long enough for us to have a lot of nostalgia for it. Or maybe it was because of the diminishing returns, both narratively and as far as ratings. Or maybe it just wasn't that great to begin with, and we don't have a desire to go back. It does make me wonder if years from now there'll be a group of teens on social media who discover this campy vampire show from decades past, and suddenly True Blood becomes a trending topic on whatever social network is the big deal in the future. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.